So I'm here at the grounds of the Nova Music Festival with my old friend for decades, Ron Cantor. Ron's been here a bunch of times. I just got here, and it's a bit overwhelming. Everywhere you see, this is a young person, someone that was here that died. Most of them died, some taken captive. What do you say, Ron? I mean, how do we describe this?
It was a massacre. Here, 300. Well, there were thousands of young people here doing what young people do, and at about 6:30 in the morning, Gaza's right that way. They began to see, maybe a little bit north, explosions in the sky.
It was no big deal, right? For Israelis,
for an Israeli, rockets coming from Gaza is just, Tuesday, or it's just normal. I was in Brazil recently, and I said to a pastor, in the beginning we thought it was just rocket fire, and he stopped me and said, "Just rocket fire?"
Yeah.
But that's what we live with
all the time.
So there's explosions in the sky. They're kind of making jokes in the beginning, like we have the Iron Dome, we're going to be okay. And then they begin to hear gunfire, and every 10 minutes or so, it got more and more severe. What happened is there's a road right out there, which is why we don't believe that it was their initial plan to come here. They didn't know about this.
Right, so they find out, they would have come in a different way.
They would have come in directly from Gaza, right from the fence.
Yeah, so they're coming down this road, probably going somewhere else, and it's like, look at this.
Yeah.
Shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
Israeli. Unprotected, just little security, right?
There's a Israeli documentary that was done that shows all the text messages and the conversations, WhatsApp, voices to parents, and, fathers saying, mothers crying, "Hi, do what you can, hi, we're sending help." Messages of mothers knowing their children were dying, have been shot already, saying help is on the way, but knowing help isn't going to come. So they flooded in from the street, from the road, and they begin to shoot, and kids just begin to, there are bomb shelters here. They threw grenades into the bomb shelters. In the end, Dr. Brown, it was 346 young people that were killed. And this is what I'm going to share now. This is a little bit intense, a little warning. But there's a woman named Gal Davush. She came with her husband. They got separated. When they finally found her, by eyewitness testimony, she had been gang raped. Her underwear was down to her knees. Her crotch was bloodied. She had been, from what we understand, after the last one was done with her, he just shot her in the head. They cut off one of her breasts and played with it like a toy. Yeah. This was savagery beyond anything we can imagine.
Yeah, people who look at Jews as animals anyway, as just the enemy to be killed. And so people say, yeah, but this is like a rock festival. Yeah, people doing what people do, murder them.
Right.
And ironically, these are like peaceniks here.
Right.
These are the people like love everybody, get along together, right?
They would be most likely to want to do some sort of peace program with Palestinians, hoping for peace with Palestinians. They're not hardcore right-wingers. They don't call for death for Arabs. They're sweet kids.
So the mentality of Hamas, it's not about let's work out a two-state solution and live side by side peacefully. Hamas says there can be no Jews. In the land, there can be no Jews. They must be annihilated or driven out. And Hamas, it's not about a nationalist movement. It's radical Islam. In other words, the enemies of America are the same enemies here.
Well, that's really been the philosophy or the ideology of the Arab nations going back to before 1948. There can't be a Jewish nation here.
Yeah.
Now, over time, Egypt, Jordan, now Morocco, they said, you know what, this is ridiculous. It's better to live in peace. But the radical Islamic ideologies, Iran calls for the they don't call for a Palestinian state.
Right.
They call for the destruction of Israel. And while we're talking about the G word, genocide, understand that Israel has suffered through 53 attempted genocides. Go back to Esther. The very words that Haman and the Ahasuerus sent out, it said, on this day, you are to go out and you are to kill every Jew, women and children, young and old. Moses, when he was a baby, escaped genocide.
Yeah.
Jesus, Yeshua, escaped genocide. The Holocaust. So genocide we're not perpetrators. We're victims of it.
Right. And from the very outset, let's move all the way up to 1947.
Right.
Because there was a proposal for 2 states before that. 37.
Yes, 36.
Okay. So 47, when the UN announces the partition plan,
right.
At that time, the Arab nations start attacking. Right.
Yes.
Then in 48, when Israel declares its independence, then the major war.
Right.
So the whole thing about the Nakba, originally that meant the defeat of the Arab nations in war. That was its first reference there. The so-called catastrophe. So the only thing that has kept Israel here is God's grace and militant security.
Right.
In other words, it's not like everyone said, okay, live and let live. It's like, no, we will wipe you out. We just can't do it yet.
Right. We have to apologize for having an effective military.
Yeah.
We have to apologize for having the Iron Dome. I see it. Congressmen, congresswomen all the time say it's not fair because Israel has the Iron Dome. Understand, if we don't have the Iron Dome, I live in Ashkelon. I see rockets go over my house to Ashdod all the time. Rockets land we were ground zero for rocket fire on October 7th. If we did not have the Iron Dome, it would have been a massacre.
Yeah.
And it would have been one of many throughout the last 20, 30 years.
Right. And Hamas has said since October 7th, we want to do October 7th over and over.
Yes.
Until there is no more. And those, look around.
Yeah.
This is celebrated.
Right.
Look, whatever, as Israel's waging war in Gaza, and let's say they could do this a little better, we know the intent is not to kill civilians.
Right.
That's the intent, the goal.
Right.
And that's why right now, so many Israeli soldiers are dying in Gaza trying to fight a certain way and not kill citizens, minimize that. To the contrary, in Gaza, that when they drag the corpse of an Israeli woman, not even a soldier, Israeli woman, everyone's shouting Allahu Akbar.
Right.
This is radical Islam. It's infected a whole people. I look at the people of Gaza as victims in a sense as well, because they've been indoctrinated. They've been raised with this, with state TV. They live under radical Islam. So in your view, when the terrorists do this, and they try to deny the sexual thing, but they can't. Even the UN,
overwhelming evidence.
Even the UN had to acknowledge, yes, there was sexual violence against women. In light of all this, why is it that the whole world isn't outraged with Hamas? The whole world hasn't said you give back the hostages now. Why is the main critique of Israel?
Well, number one is in progressive circles these days, if you are perceived to be oppressed, then you are right in whatever you do. I saw one post that said rape is resistance. In other words, anything you do, if you're oppressed, whether it's murder, rape, or whatever, it's okay.
It's justifiable.
That's in the natural. Yeah. But then in the spiritual, understand that the Jewish people are God's chosen nation. We have to be here at the coming of the Lord.
Yeah.
This nation must be here. Zechariah 14, he comes back to the Mount of Olives.
Right.
And so Satan's mission since Abraham has been to wipe out the Jewish people. That's why it's not just today, 53 attempted genocides throughout history.
So when God says about Israel, B'ni B'chari Yisrael, Israel's my son, my firstborn. So the moment he marks Israel for a purpose, right, of service in the world to make God known, bring the Messiah to the world, the moment he marks them, Satan marks them.
Right.
Wants to destroy them. And then when he promises the land, Satan wants to keep them out of the land. Yeshua's coming back to a Jewish Jerusalem, keep Jerusalem out of Jewish hands.
Right.
And then by all means, keep Jews away from Yeshua. To deny that this whole thing is satanic is to deny reality. It's to be irrational, isn't it?
Right.
So how is Israel feeling right now? Just yesterday, 150 missiles from Hezbollah in the north.
170.
170. Okay, first I heard 100, then 150, 170. And how many tens of thousands have been evacuated?
About 80,000 in the north and about 80,000 down here in Gaza.
Right. So this is just ongoing. Obviously, people weary, but the fight for the hostages every day. What's the psyche of the Israelis right now?
The mood in this country is that we are broken. If I didn't have Yeshua, if I didn't wake up every day and remember what I believe, who he is, him inside of me, I would be utterly hopeless. And that's most of the country. We had some good news on Shabbat.
Yeah.
My wife and I were coming home from our weekly congregational service, and we stop in a cafe. We have no idea what's happened. And these two women, we're sitting at the bar, eating at the bar, and these two women sit next to us, and we could see something's going on, and we start to, and they tell us, they said, my best friend, her son just got rescued, and we're on our way to the hospital.
Yeah.
So the whole nation, for one day, there was this sense of release and joy and happiness at four out of over 100.
And the one young lady that the whole world knew, because there's the footage of her.
Argamani.
Right. So her boyfriend is separated, and then they're putting her on a motorcycle, and she's saying, "Please don't kill me," with terror in her eyes. So everyone, when you saw that face, it's like,
right.
You could relate much more.
Yes. And so for one day, there was just this sense of peace, victory, joy. But then the next day, or 2 days later, 170 missiles from Hezbollah. We're fighting a two-front war. You hear about Hamas, but Hezbollah is alive and well, far better equipped than Hamas. So for the most part, Israelis are living with a daily hopelessness.
Yeah. So for followers of Jesus, followers of Yeshua, who will watch this interview, who will hear this interview, what can they do? What should they do? What should their posture be? We grieve over the death of Palestinians. You are a very strong critic of the current government, so it's not like whatever Israel does, we just sanction blindly. Right. But we know Satan is trying to wipe the Jewish people out. We know that Hamas, Hezbollah, these are satanic entities. These terrorists need the radical transformation of God, and there needs to be justice to stop their activity. What can believers do? What should they do?
Let me just say two things. Number one is prayer. We need prayer, intercession, every day. It was the Jewish people that birthed the ecclesia. It was through Anna and Simeon praying hours and hours and hours, and they were prototypes of thousands of other Jews that were praying for the coming of Messiah, and it's gone to the nations. Now we need you to pray. Be that womb of intercession to pray blessing and grace and revival here in Israel. The other thing is lift up your voice. If you go online, it's the wild, wild west. It's very nasty. Anti-Semitism it's okay now. I see it some of the most. I saw yesterday a fella, I think he was in New York, saying that he wished Hitler was still alive to finish the job. We need you to lift up your voice. Do not be silent. Let people know that you stand with Israel, that you stand with the Jewish people.
3 days after October 7th, so before the full offensive is in motion, Muslims in Sydney, Australia, at the Sydney Opera House are chanting, "Gas the Jews." Protesters recently at Columbia University saying, "We are all Hamas." So let's identify the
One of their professors saying he was exhilarated when he saw October 7th.
Oh, yeah, famous anti-Semite Norman Finkelstein said, he thought it was only 50 Israelis killed first. He was exhilarated. When the numbers got higher, not as exhilarated. So this is something very demonic. And last thing, I'm hearing reports, though. I've talked to young men who are serving in Gaza, serving in the north, at home for a few days, going back out, that they're finding greater openness than ever among the Israelis. Yeah. I've heard just even on the secular realm, you watch secular TV, they're praying the Psalms, things like that. There's a recognition of Christian love for Israel, like the Bulletproof Vest that you're distributing, God TV, other Christian ministries. Mm-hmm. One fellow said to me that a guy said, "Are you Christian?" "Yes." "Are you evangelical?" "Yes." He said, "Thank the evangelicals." Mm-hmm. So is this a time of spiritual openness in the midst of the pain?
Well, I don't want to exaggerate. Whenever things like this happen, go back to 9/11, there is an initial, first nationwide unity. Yeah. That's already gone.
Right.
Certainly when you face death in the eyes, so many Israelis died, you begin to think about eternity. I wouldn't call it a move of God. I wouldn't call it revival, but there's openness. I've heard reports too of believing soldiers. 1,000 soldiers are messianic, sharing with other soldiers. One guy coming home and grabbing a bunch of books before going back because he's getting so many questions. But we need more. We need more prayer. We need God to show up.
Yeah, may God bring revival to the people of Gaza. Amen. May their eyes be open to the murderous regime they're under and the deadly religion of radical Islam. May God bring good out of this terrible, terrible loss of life.